before us a bill that unfortunately we don't believe in markets, and we're told that markets won't work, so we have a terrorism risk insurance bill that means the federal government is going to be the insurer of last resort. And there have been some improvements over what we have put forward in the past, and I agree with those improvements if in fact we have to do this. I'm not convinced that we have to do it, but we're going to do it, and I understand that. And I think the work of the committee, of which I'm a member, it has been very good. But there's one real problem with this bill, and it's about smoke and mirrors. It's about not being honest with the American people. This bill was designed so it would have no score. It wasn't designed to do the best that we can for Americans should we have a tragedy, and it wasn't designed to create the flexibility that will be necessary if we do have a tragedy. Now, let me outline for you the way this bill's set up is that we could have a significant tragedy, God forbid, in this country from a terrorist attack, and the bill will mandate spikes in casualty and property insurance far above what will need to happen because we passed the bill to pass a CBO score. And so what could happen is we would have to collect billions of dollars over an 18-month period through premium increases on everybody in the country, not just where we had the problem, everybody in the country, because we've designed a bill that will in fact mandate that, or at least could mandate that. And I've been around this place 10 years. I know exactly what's going to happen if that comes about through this TRIA bill. The first thing will happen is the Senate and the House will pass an elimination of this requirement. And so what will happen is the American taxpayer will get stuck with all this. And they all know that. Everybody agrees that they designed the bill to meet CBO. So what I put in was an amendment that would give flexibility to the Treasury so that we didn't, after one tragedy, create another tragedy with markedly elevated casualty and property rates. You still recoup the money, but you do it over a longer period of time if it's necessary. And you give the Secretary of the Treasury the ability to do that. Now, my friend from New York says there's a budget point of order lies against it. It does, according to CBO. I agree. It does. But the difference between this and most budget points of order is this will not increase the deficit 1 penny, my amendment. Not 1 penny. And I'd also note that my colleague from New York has voted to override budget points of order every time this year they've been offered. So it's going to be curious to me that all of a sudden we have a budget point of order raised by someone who has voted to override the budget point of orders every time it's been offered in the Senate this session. And it goes to why you should not pass this bill without common sense in terms of how we collect the recoupment. And I understand the constraints of CBO, but I also understand common sense. So we're going to play the game on the constraints, and we're ultimately going to pass on, rather than recoup, we're ultimately going to pass it on to the American taxpayer, which hollows out the whole purpose of the bill. So this has a $1 billion score, which we're going to have a point of order, which I'm sure I will lose. But when you vote for this bill, know that you're not voting for what the bill says it's going to do, because it's going to do something completely different than what it says if we were to have one of these catastrophes. And the political pressure to not have these massive increases in property and casualty insurance, this place will fall, and so will the House, and we will change this, and we'll have the score then. We'll have the score then. And ultimately, your children will pay for the cost of this terrorism risk insurance, not the people that are owning the property today, not the insurance company. We'll just kick the can down the road just like we have everything else. So it would seem to me that we would want to do something that works along the parameters of this bill, and we ought to build in flexibility to this bill so that, it may be 10 years that we get on one of these because the bill's divided up to meet the score. So it doesn't score in any one period. So we could have, over an 18-month period, we could have to recoup it all. And people couldn't tolerate those kind of rates increases in their businesses or their homes. They wouldn't be able to tolerate it. And we would change it. Just like I'm asking for us to change it now and be honest with the American people. We're going to change it if that happens. We will change this, and we will delay the onset of the collection of this recoupment. Everybody knows that will happen. So why not be honest about it and put it into the bill now and waive the budget point of order, because it doesn't change the deficit one penny. It changes when we collect it, but we still collect it against the risk of not collecting it at all. That's what I asked my colleagues. I don't expect to win the amendment, but it's another confirmation for the American people that we're not about truth, we're not about doing common sense things, we're about playing games. And we're about satisfying the demands of the industry over which this applies. Nobody knows what could happen in this country in terms of terrorism. But everybody knows I'm right about this issue. And so all I'm saying is fess up. Be honest, colleagues. Let's build the flexibility in this so we don't have to address it. And the Treasury Secretary, no matter whether it's Democrat or Republican administration, can use common sense to guide about how fast this recoupment will come. Otherwise, you haven't done anything to improve this bill, if in fact this is not accepted. And so I'll be leaving here at the end of the year, and hopefully we never see another terrorism event in this country. But if we do, it will be a sweet irony when you all say, oh, time out, we're not going to do what we said we're going to do in that bill because the country can't take it. And that's what you will do, is put one tragic event on top of another. And you won't do that. So what will happen is you'll change this bill, you'll get that score, you'll call it an emergency, and you'll do it anyway. All I'm asking is being honest about what's going to ultimately happen on this should we have an event and it fall within one of these close parameters based on what we've said in the bill, because we're running the bill according to what CBO says, not what common sense says. So I look forward to having a vote on this amendment. I understand that my likelihood of being successful, but I also understand the lack of honesty in dealing with American people if we don't accept this amendment, and I yield the floor.